3, 2, 1, 0. All engine running. Liftoff. We have a liftoff. 32.
Hello everyone, welcome back to my second Kerbal Space Program video. Today we're going to be recreating the Skylab space station. And I'm Andrew the astronaut. And as you can see, we are well underway construction of the space station. The Skylab was America's first space station. Early visions of a space station predated the dawn of the space age. Unfortunately for America, the Soviets launched their first space station, named the Salyut, in 1974. I'm sorry if I'm butchering that name. The main goal of the Skylab program was to reuse any old hardware from the Apollo lunar lander program of Apollo era. The Skylab consisted of a wet workshop, which consisted of a reused Saturn V fuel tank, and remade into a lab basically. Hence the name, Skylab. Now, you can see that I'm starting to clutter up this bit here. Now, the Skylab didn't really have that, it just looks better, I guess. So, yeah, that's why I did it. I first started off using the Mark I crew cabin as that docking adapter thing, but then I couldn't attach the big docking port, the big docking port onto it, and yeah, it was just basically really bad. So I switched to the fuel tank. Anyway, I am right now constructing the lab bit. Now, wet workshops aren't a thing in Kerbal Space Program, so I decided to just clip two actual labs together and then move them out so that only the windows show up. And you can see I'm just cluttering it up even more because early space stations were quite cluttered. And I'm using fuel tanks because they're basically zero mass. You can use the fuel in them during flight. So it's very efficient. And I'm just creating the end right now. There was a docking port there, but I decided not to do it because we already have a docking port. And you know, we could expand this in the future, but for the sake of this recreational video, I would most likely not want to do that. Anyway, we are done basically with the main structure. Now we need to do the solar arrays. So the Skylab, let me talk a little bit more about the Skylab. And the Skylab complex consisted of four major components: the wet workshop that I just told you, an airlock, and a docking adapter. Also the Apollo telescope mount, which according to NASA stands for an ATM. So cash in your money while you can. The Apollo Command and Service Module transported crews to and from the Skylab and remained attached to the station throughout the crew station. The wet workshop, which was then again a converted from a S4B Saturn V upper stage, served as the main working and living and sleeping quarters for the crew. It contained exercise equipment, a gallery, many scientific experiments, in particular for the life science studies. Two large solar arrays, which I have currently finished constructing with the extending pistons and such, provided 12.4 kilowatts of power to the station according to NASA. The airlock enabled the astronauts to conduct spacewalks, obviously, while the docking adapter included a prime backup docking port for the Apollo spacecraft and has the lot of experiment packages. The ATM contained a telescope for solar observance and 4 solar arrays for additional power. Now, I've gone not to make this and use the relay antenna because number one, the telescopes in this game look very weird. If you have seen my Hubble Space Telescope video, you may know this. By the way, great video. You should check it out. It's in my channel. Anyway, in orbit, the Skylab weighed 170,000 pounds, by far the heaviest spacecraft to date. And these are all sources from NASA's website, which, you know, nasa.gov. Go check it out. It's a really nice website. And now here's the dilemma of folding up that module, that relay antenna bit. So if you look up the Skylab rocket, its payload fairing is very straight up and then coned up. That's hard to do when a massive relay antenna is in the way. So right now I'm configuring the robotics. I haven't really had much practice with the KSP robotics, but with enough precision, you can make a pretty cool stuff. So now, oh wow, what a realistic looking Saturn V this is gonna be. Yeah, this is gonna be totally unrealistic. This is gonna be the widest fairing. It's a comically wide fairing, basically. So, yeah, it was not as good as you may have thought it might look. Here comes that fairing. So I decided to switch out that other relay antenna for a different one just because it fit better. And I'd say it looks pretty nice at this point. Now all I have to do is construct the Saturn V. And I went through a lot of design iterations, so you may see a lot of cuts in the footage, but that's because I'm just experimenting. So yeah, we're gonna make the second stage with the 5J2 engines, and thanks to the Making History DLC, we can make very accurate Saturn Vs actually. Standard procedures, you know, the 3.75 meter and 5 meter diameter fuel tanks with the Skiff and Mastodon engines, which are basically the in-game versions of the F1 and J2 engines by Rocketdyne. So yeah, we're almost done here, and all we have to do is just configure staging, add some Separatrons. You might be wondering, well, why are you adding those stuff, Andrew? Well, you'll see, because the launch sequence, it gets pretty cinematic. Only if I had visual mods. I promise everyone I will get visual mods soon. So, yeah, stay tuned. So, yeah, that payload fairing, now that I look at it again, it is incredibly unrealistic. And I'm just configuring the thrust-weight ratio right now. I thought the Saturn Vs in this game were, like, immensely overpowered. But turns out, even this cannot lift this entire thing, because it would have a thrust-weight ratio of 0.94 at the beginning. Very close, so I had to remove some fuel, and I remembered, oh, the fuel tanks that make up the main thing, so this main space station, so I decided to remove the fuel from those. And here I'm just configuring the staging, hiring some new Kerbonauts, and putting them in. 2 engineers, 2 scientists. Cinematic shot. 3, 2, 1, go.
0. All engine running. Liftoff. We have a liftoff.
Wow.
32 minutes.
Isn't that wonderful? By the way, this is my real frame rate right now, so it may seem a little slow, but it's pretty cool. Anyway, to the launch. And if you're enjoying the video so far, consider liking and subscribing. Even considering would be pretty appreciated for me. So now we're gonna do a standard orbital maneuver procedure. We're just gonna do some gravity turns. Now this is actually the third attempt of launching this rocket. First attempt, wibbly wobbly Kraken attacks. Attempt 2, Kraken attacks. Attempt 3, Kraken attacks. Yeah, the Kraken really likes this. I had to auto strut, and you know, here comes that wacky rocket spinning thing again. I was like, oh no, am I gonna have to do another launch? But we're just right out of fuel for the stage, so first stage. Now we're gonna orient the cinematic shot. Oh, isn't that beautiful? Beautiful. And fire up those Skiff engines and coast our way up to orbit. So yeah, we're up in orbit now. Yeah, I did cut it because this video, when I finished editing, it was over 50 minutes long, so I had to cut some useless parts. And here we have everything extended up, and it is good, and thanks for watching. Yeah, no, that's not true. We gotta make the Saturn 1B, right? So the Saturn 1B was the rocket that launched the Apollo spacecraft to the Skylab. So that mission we just launched was Skylab 1, which was the actual space station itself. And here I am just fiddling around with the stock craft because I can't waste my time just making an Apollo spacecraft. But I had such a hard time replacing that Cheetah engine with the Wolfhound, which is the better analog in this case. So let me just rip through a bunch of facts about the Saturn 1B. So So it's around 80 feet tall, 24 meters for you European people out there. The diameter is around 21 feet, 6.53 meters for you metric people. Mass with nothing in it, it's like 92,000 pounds. And 42,000 kilograms for you metric people. So yeah, it's pretty small compared to the Saturn V, but hey, it can lift a lot of payload. It only has 2 stages. I have added 3 because of the crew module. And it can carry about 46,000 pounds into orbit, which is a lot, actually. And it also has a 100% success record with 9 out of 9 launch successes. It would have gone from LC-37, LC-34 at Cape Canaveral, and LC-39B at the Kennedy Space Center. And yeah, the first stage, it uses RP-1 and LOX, obviously, while the S-4B, which is the second stage, uses LH-2 and LOX, which is liquid hydrogen and liquid oxygen. And now I'm configuring that first stage. It is made out of 8, I can't think of it off the top of my head, but 8 fuel tanks from the late Keystone missiles, or Keystone, well, I guess it is Keystone in the Kerbal timeline, but Redstone missiles made in the 1950s to launch the first 1960s to launch the first satellites into orbit, which allowed for relatively pretty fast making of the first stage. I mean, it's just reused rocket parts, so why not? And here's me using the Skiff engines. Or not the Skiff, but Skipper engines. Now, this thing has a really high thrust-to-weight ratio. It has a thrust-to-weight ratio of 2.27 at the moment of launch with full throttle, so you'll see me throttle down during the launch. It uses Rocketdyne H1s. Even as much as I wanted to get realism overall and use real H1s, would mod the game a little too much. So basically, yeah, there are a bunch of configurations. There's the one with the Apollo spacecraft, uncrewed, and big payload fairings. And it also, if you look up Saturn 1B launch pad, you'll get the Milk Stool platform, which was an extra platform built for the Saturn 1B, so they could just reuse the launch platform of the Saturn V and then just add the Saturn 1B onto it. Oh, yeah, by the way, super
Ignition
cinematic shot.
sequence start.
Right
6,
back in.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. All engine running. Liftoff. We have a liftoff. 32 minutes.
Liftoff. Alright, I'm gonna skip through since this is a bit boring, because you just saw me go into orbit. Sorry if the footage is a bit choppy. I think I may have sped it up a bit too much. Anyway, we're just gonna quickly dock to the space station. Do not dock at the speed that I am doing it right now. This is sped up 300 times. Well, basically 3 times normal speed. So do not do it like that. And oh, a bit of a barrel roll there. I was not expecting that, but it was pretty unstable. So anyway, that was the video, I guess. Thank you everyone for watching, and I'll see you next time. This is Andrew the Astronaut, signing off.
It's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.